whether it's in human language, English, French, Arabic, or computer language, Python, Java, C++. The people that are in danger are the people outside of that, where you have middle managers doing hand waving, you know what I mean, or other people doing the digital equivalent of taking out the trash, just moving bits around, kind of manually using a lot of judgment, but not really knowing how to systematize it. Those are the jobs at the extremes that are in danger. But the skill set for all of us, regardless of the industry, is this skill set of being able to articulate what we mean and meaning what we say is a continuation of that.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Marc Verbenkov's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 193. In this episode, Marc sits down with Eric Daimler, entrepreneur, investor, and longtime expert in artificial intelligence, to unpack how technology is reshaping society. The conversation moves from optimism about AI's potential to make the world better to the real-world challenges of job displacement, bias in AI systems, and the addictive nature of modern platforms. Eric discusses the need for sharper communication skills in an era dominated by automation, and how neurosymbolic AI could offer more structured, explainable models for decision-making. They also explore why our relationship to work, identity, and value may need a fundamental rethink. About the guest, a recognized authority in artificial intelligence with 20-plus years of experience as an operational executive, investor, researcher, and policy advisor. Co-founded 6 technology companies that have done pioneering work in fields ranging from software systems to statistical arbitrage. Author of the forthcoming book, The Future is Formal, the roadmap for using technology to solve society's biggest problems. Currently Chair, CEO, and co-founder of Conexus AI, a next-generation hybrid generative AI platform for trustworthy and fast digital modernization. As a former Presidential Innovation Fellow and current board member of companies advancing AI commercialization, I am also committed to driving the agenda for U.S. leadership in AI research, commercialization, and public adoption.
Perfect. Well, hi there, Eric. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. It's great to talk to another expert and knowledgeable person about AI and kind of the wild future we're moving into. So very happy to have you onto the podcast to talk about this.
Good to be here.
Yeah. The question I ask all of my guests to start off with, how did you get involved in the work that you're doing now? Like, what brought you into the world of artificial intelligence?
I've been doing this probably longer than I would care to think about. Really a long time. Just a happy accident of my picking the right parents, I suppose, and where I was quite literally one of those kids in a basement building a computer given to me by my parents when I was, I think it might have been 9. I mean, that sounds precocious, but it really was like that. It was out of a kit. I mean, not, I didn't build my own chips from sand or something, but yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and AI back then meant something different than it means today.
I bet.
That was the time of expert systems that really turned into a big disillusionment, but with the whole field. But I stuck with that general concept of computers making our world better. From back then, it evolved into expressions of robotics, to then other areas of software, and then the emergence of the popularization of machine learning into now what we experience today. So I've been doing this a long time. I've been in computer science as this term has morphed from how I had started, fascinated as a little kid, and thought this term was the future. To now, I've been an investor, an entrepreneur, a researcher, and then even spent time in Washington D.C. in the federal government as a science advisor, non-political. Yeah, no science. Because science isn't political.
Yeah. Well, good. Obviously everybody has their own perspectives on politics, but I try to keep this podcast as objective and unbiased in that sense as possible. So happy to hear that. So maybe a question here to start off with. So I've had a couple guests on the podcast that, like you, got into this game very early. I actually interviewed one of the founders of the of Twitter, actually, before it became X. They were there at the beginning, and there just seems to be always a motivated sense of making the world better through technology, right? Which is what I picked up in what you were saying there. I'm kind of a techno-positivist as well. You've been in the game a little bit longer than me. It's kind of a large question here, but do you think that technology has been making the world better over the last, several decades? I know it's a nuanced kind of answer, but what's your general sense here?
Well, first I could say I'm really encouraged that you start there because Ev and Jack, I don't know all the three Twitter co-founders, but I know those two well. In San Francisco, you kind of just it happens. Those guys are great, both of them, independently. And I think from what time I've spent with each of them independently, they really both have their own view of how to use technology to make the world a better place. For me, I grew fascinated with technology at a young age because I saw it as a liberating influence. It's a place where I, as a little kid, could have outsized power in the world. I would have outside expression in the world that otherwise wasn't available to me as a little kid. That was what became intoxicating as a child, even. And I know this sounds precocious to say that way and put all this on little me, but I really have a vivid memory of thinking about how big a deal this was going to be. And I have continued to be optimistic about what it can provide. But it's perhaps a little bit like many of the tooling that we have around us and have experienced before we were born that we now live with. That the freeway system is great, but there are downsides, and we have to live with those downsides from decisions that were made many decades ago. Many decades ago. So technology, broadly speaking, from material science to digital technology, I think really comes into existence and benefiting humanity only to the extent that we're all engaged in that conversation. How do we want to participate with this technology? How do we want safeguards to be put in with this technology? We all need to be. We need everybody on the field. Is how Megan Smith said it when I was in the White House. Everybody needs to be participating in this. They can't be bystanders and have the nerds like me just determining how the technology is going to look to meet their own quarterly objectives. And I want people to be involved genuinely, because if I don't have a broad understanding from a population about what a technology can provide to make people's lives better, there's a chance of that technology being resisted. I need what I developed to be embraced, aggressively embraced, ideally. And so I want an educated population engaging with the conversation, giving feedback about what's important to them or not important to them. The conversation around bias and safety was trendy a couple of years back, and it's waning a little bit now. But the general concept that we want to shape any sort of automation to respect people is probably evergreen topic. And that
requires everybody to know uh, what they want out of this technology. So to answer the question, I'm optimistic. I'd continue to be optimistic about where this could go, as long as we bring in a large part of the population in our states, in the country, in the world, into how we want this to take effect.
Okay, so how so okay, I'll back up a bit. I've been talking with family members quite a bit. Where I'm from a very entrepreneurial family. You know, my brother's got a business. I started a business a little while ago. My father, my uncle, everybody here has a bit of a business. And as we are hiring, you know, younger generations, there seems to be, shall we say, a lack in the ability to focus because of the modern day distractions that are all around us. You know, TikTok brain comes to mind quite a bit. If there's your message about wanting people to get involved in the conversation is something I've heard many times, and I completely agree with it. To what extent is that limited by the technologies that we are creating? I want to tag this into artificial intelligence at some point, but you know, obviously the internet and social media is a phenomenal tool, but I also see it as a I don't want to call it just a blanket harm, but you know, certainly as a distraction mechanism that might limit the larger population or the masses from contributing to the conversation that I agree with you is so important.
There's really a lot in there. My uh, observation about social media is that uh, uh, yeah, not to be too hyperbolic, but I'd say it's a cancer. I don't. I think it's a net negative. All social media that I experience, everything from X and Facebook all the way to the new iterations like Jack's Blue Sky that he's not part of anymore, I guess. Uh, I think it's a cancer. It degrades our brains. I think we have to fight. We have to fight against it. You know, when I open a bag of potato chips, um, I, and I have one potato chip. There's a certain satisfaction. I mean, I like potato chips. They taste good to me. Sometimes when I travel in hotels, I kind of open the little cupboard and see the potato chips there on the mini bar, and they call to me. When I open them, I'm not having one potato chip. I'm having a couple of potato chips. These things are manufactured by companies that know our physiology, better than us in many ways, right?
Yes.
And you can say, well, Eric, just use your willpower. Like, okay, well, that's true. I mean, that is, like, I guess, literally true. But in a practical way, I, I, I'm sometimes tired. I'm sometimes distracted. I'm sometimes hungry, and I am gonna have more than one potato chip, and maybe I'll even have another bag. They're addictive, and we are up against something even more powerful now, which is uh, a massive amount of computing power being brought to bear to analyze our psychology and reinforce what's always been around. How do we get people to see more ads? But how do we keep people addicted? That's how our physiology was engineered for me eating potato chips, and
Yeah.
that's how it continues with social media. So what I do is I quite literally delete the apps. If I need to go on social media, I ask other people to do it for me, and they will post on there for me. But if something requires a Facebook group, then I'm not going to be participating. If somebody tells me to go on Instagram, I will go on through a browser, not the app, so that I'm not get on there. I have never installed TikTok, mostly because I think that's Chinese spyware. In a government capacity, like, you're not allowed.
Right.
In some countries have even banned it, I think, properly. Uh, I, uh, I resist my potato chips by just not having them around. Okay, I never open the mini bar at the hotel.
Right.
And with social media, I resist it by not having any of the apps and never using them, however fun they can be. I don't mean to be too high minded about this, because this stuff's all around us, and you can get sucked into YouTube Shorts, just like
Oh yeah.
anybody else. But
Yeah. You fear.
uh, you get- I was gonna say one more thing. So about the how we structure society part and the decisions to make, and we have this, like the company that I currently run today is 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 a technology that really automates white collar jobs. It automates knowledge workers. I mean, it's really what we do, and
Mm.
it automates people about on a ratio of about 200 to 1. I mean, so what required 200 people now requires one person.
Mm.
This is like most automation, it's not great work that gets automated. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not often automating work that people want to do. I don't even know many examples of any of work that people like doing that you're going to automate. Maybe somebody's going to say something about graphic design, but or music. But in this particular case, there's a automation of reconciling databases, the semantics or the meanings, or the formats is an easy way to say it. That is tedious in many cases. It can take millions of dollars. It can take months, if not years. Citibank spent when we talked to them about $120 million to give a sense of this, consolidating 86 databases down to 16. So anyway, we do this for one of the European governments. People can go look that up. I don't want to advertise these people, but you can search the web. It's all public. So they reconciled the databases between power sources. So power sources could be solar or coal or wind, wherever the power source comes from, or nuclear. Wherever the power source comes from, those all have databases running them. Databases for installation, databases for operation, right? Those are all a bunch of databases. And then you got databases by vendor. You got databases by versions within the vendor, but within the models within the vendor. A lot of databases.
Mm.
So this government that we work with in Europe, they used us to automate the process of integrating these databases so that they could serve their ratepayers better. They can fire up the coal plants less frequently. They can lower the rates because they can make the usage of their electricity more efficient by unifying the modeling for all their power sources. But they do that by us automating away hundreds of jobs. They wrote a paper that said if the entirety of the European Union was to adopt our technology, the European Union as a whole would save somewhere on the order of 300 to 400 million euros per year. A lot of money. It's like real money,
Significant.
right?
Yeah.
But 85% of that savings was in the elimination of jobs of people that use this old technology called RDFOwl. We're eliminating this technology. So we talked to even the people that do that work, and they said, "Man, we don't love this job, but man, this is my job. This is my, I'm pension. I'm retiring in 4 years. Can you just wait a little bit?" It's like, so yeah, what do we do with that? What we do with that is we go to other countries or other continents. In this particular case, for that technology, we have a lot of different products on our platform. But for that particular product, we go to other geographies that aren't so sensitive to jobs being eliminated from automation. That's a sort of automation that isn't likely to make the newspapers because it's they're still programmers in the way that the media might portray them. So you're automating away programming work, and it's not terribly a sympathetic class worker class. But in any case, we're automating, and this is a point. This is an example through the dialogue we're having about the choices society will make around where and how to implement AI broadly, the automation broadly. Society has to make a choice, and it's going to be, as in our experience and Connexus's experience, it's going to be context dependent about how we want to deploy this technology.
Right. So you could find certain countries For example, like the example that I've been talking about and hearing about a long time is, AI diagnosticians are going to replace doctors at some point, right? Or have the capacity to. If not, ChatGPT, this new version is claiming to be reasonably close to that, right? So you could have the technology to do that, but then you're going to have groups of doctors, associations, countries even say, no, we don't want an artificial intelligence doctor. We want to still use human doctors. So even if you have the technology, even if you have the capacity to make a group, make a job unemployable, right? You still have that human willpower, the desire to keep humans around. And I guess this is the point, right? Even if you have the technology, there's social factors that are in play that are going to sway things one way or the other.
And this will happen more likely in regulated industries like public utilities, like public health outside of the United States. In private industry, you're going to have generally less sensibilities around that, right? Less sensitivities, excuse me. Companies will find some niche to boldly evaluate whether or not they have people or automated services.
One question that comes up in this, technological unemployment discussion is obviously like what happens to those people that are, maybe not 4 years away from getting their pension, but they've been doing one job for a long time, say a decade or so. Their skills are all focused on that one job, and then AI comes in, or other kinds of robotics is. I know you've dealt with robotics quite a bit. These things come in, replace that person. Like, how feasible is it for them to upskill or learn new skills, reskill, and then become relevant in another industry? If this is happening in multiple different industries, is it not shrinking the total job pool, right? Maybe in a couple of years' time or something. Like, I think this is the general argument that people are talking about, right? Technological unemployment versus creative destruction.
There is a lot to say in there, actually, perhaps more than you intended for one question. In my humble view, uh, that that issue could be triggering for some, or the answer could be triggering to some, because the concept of, in one sense, people hear the word retraining and get numb to the amount of times they've heard that from politicians. So it can become meaningless. Where perhaps another perspective, people can be triggered by the degree to which people should somehow be protected from being laid off, as opposed to just be the job being evaluated for what it is. I I am currently of the view, and so this is a strong feeling, but weakly held, WEAK, weakly held, in that I'm susceptible to arguments about this, but I haven't heard good ones yet, which is the idea of protecting the people, not the jobs, because the concept that we are currently living with is that jobs are continue to get automated away. They're going to continue to be displaced. But what's changed? What's different from the time of our grandparents and even our parents is the rapidity with which the jobs get eliminated.
Yes.
In the past, the canonical example is the elevator operators. When we had automatic elevators, you could just not have your children go into the business, as it were, being elevator operator. But you could allow those people to continue to earn out their career. And funny enough, I saw an elevator operator last month. I was at the San Francisco Ballet, and there was an elevator operator. There was a guy
Very
sitting,
interesting.
a guy sitting in a chair, pushing the buttons. I don't know why. Perhaps because I was at a ballet. But such as it is, some of the jobs, I guess, can still exist. There's a slow decline, whereas
in this world, these businesses can abruptly change, and it can be shocking. It can be really disruptive to a person or a family. Earlier in my career, I was part of a team that automated part of the trading of U.S. securities. Back in people can look at movies that are coming out of Hollywood in the 80s, maybe even the 90s, and see all the hustle and bustle of the New York Stock Exchange floor. Well, where today it's just a media backdrop and a tourist attraction.
Right.
The entrance of the New York Stock Exchange literally changed about 15 years ago, where it was just a uh, run-of-the-mill employee entrance, but now it's this fancy ground floor, floor-to-ceiling glass entrance to invite media and visitors. It's really changed. That's because of automation, of course. So I was there during part of that transition. Again, the class of people that trade U.S. securities are not a really sympathetic group. So it's people really don't cry too much when you say these stockbrokers or investment bankers lost their jobs, even in the hundreds or thousands. The abruptness of that change was pretty startling. We were working to code it how these traders did their business. And so you could just think U.S. Treasuries. U.S. Treasuries are very, very simple type of security, but there were literally people, humans, picking up telephones, calling other humans who found telephones to trade these very run-of-the-mill securities. So we would look at how to code that into a machine-readable format to get every nuance about how this works. It didn't work, and then it didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work. But then when it worked, you didn't need to wait till Thursday afternoon to fire the treasury desk staff. Like, it's just cut. They're gone. They're done. Clean out your desks and it's over. That's the nature of digital technology. It's it can be shocking, and we all should have some humility about the degree to which our own jobs are vulnerable to automation, even if we think they're not. Dentists, I think, of being one of the most secure jobs out there. But even if you think your job's not vulnerable to automation, you could be you benefit from some humility about the degree to which the abruptness of your own job ending might allow for some compassion for other people's experience of their jobs ending from automation. And some we think are going to end, and some we aren't thinking are going to end in the near term. A lot of us had predictions about which parts of the workforce was going to be automated first, with the transformer paper that created the current generation of large language models. Was it going to be the creative class of artists, or was it going to be white collar workers like programmers? And that's gone back and forth about which job class we think is the most in danger. So they coming back to the question, I think I am sympathetic currently to the idea of protecting the person, not the job. So there may be some construct around which people can have the shock of these job losses minimized in whatever form. That's another discussion for society at large, versus protecting the job. I am generally skeptical, and probably I could say that more strongly, but skeptical of the idea of protecting jobs from being disrupted or eliminated as technology allows.
Yeah. Well, I didn't expect us to talk about technological unemployment so much. I mean, it's one of my favorite discussions. The first 100 episodes of the podcast was actually dedicated to this. So it's great to come back to it. Maybe just one final point on this. Something that I always thought was like a really interesting idea connected to this whole automation discussion was the connection of our perceived self that's connected to the job that we have, right? So our value as a human being to society, to our family, to to everything is so intrinsically tied to our job. You go to a social function, networking event. What's the first thing that people ask? Oh, so what do you do, right? It's not who you are. What do you think about the universe? Who are you as a human being? Is what do you do? And if this idea of rapid automation and rapid technological unemployment is, as I think we're all understanding, the exponential curve of technological unemployment is going to bring about these disruptions faster and faster. What do you think about this potential shift in value structure from you being connected to your job to you being connected to something else? Like, I personally think that that's a much larger disruptor than, simply losing your job. Although I'm not, reducing that impact.
I have taken to having a sensitivity about that particular question, where it's been made clear to me that is a very American question. What do you do? So I have instead asked people, what industry are you in? And just leaving it open to have a broader discussion. And that's generally a less boorish, more inviting start to a conversation. My sense is that all of us, so that background probably informs my view about where work is going, which is that all of us need to be working on the particular skill set of honing our ability to communicate with clarity, which may sound banal, but it's important because the way in which even large language models that can interpret English perform best is through the precise prompting that it most matches the user's intention. Taken to an extreme, the idea of having your intentions be machine readable can be expressed in a syntax that we can call computer languages. So you could become a computer programmer. So there's a confluence of both these liberally trained, I mean, in the social science liberal sense, and the scientifically trained in the programmer sense, having a close bonding to each being skilled in their own way, communicating what they need to communicate, whether it's in human language, English, French, Arabic, or computer language, Python, Java, C++. The people that are in danger are the people outside of that, where you have middle managers doing hand waving, you know what I mean, or other people doing the digital equivalent of taking out the trash, just moving bits around, kind of manually using a lot of judgment, but not really knowing how to systematize it. Those are the jobs at the extremes that are in danger. But the skill set for all of us, regardless of the industry, is this skill set of being able to articulate what we mean and meaning what we say is a continuation of that.
Yeah, I think that's such an essential message to take. And, thank you very much for bringing that up. It's obviously come up in the podcast a couple of times, but, for anybody listening, who's thinking about, like, what do I do for the future? How do I get, future proofed? I think that this is one of the main things that we all need to be doing. It kind of goes back to, well, maybe the humanities are more important than what we thought in programming, as important as it's been over the last, 30 years or so, might, strangely be taking a bit of a backseat with AI and all this automation tech. I do want to circle back to, maybe away from automation and talk a little bit more about AI, because I know that you're so knowledgeable on this. We talked before recording about the bias that's in AI, and how AI, can actually help eradicate bias. This is one of the things that we message back and forth on. Could you talk to that point specifically? Because most of the podcast guests that come on, they're all kind of, waving their arms and making people aware, like, hey, there's bias in AI, right? Hey, you guys know that there's bias in AI. Be careful of this. It seems like there's more warning bells about the bias in AI rather than talking about how AI can actually help eradicate the bias. So I'm very curious about your point on this.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is, it's really funny to me how people talk about the bias existing in AI, because there's bias that exists in the world. And so the AI is taking in, at this point, pretty much all the world's data has been consumed. I mean,
Yeah.
virtually all the world's data. is that not bias? Like inherently, it's kind of ridiculous. And if we're going to try to eliminate the bias, how exactly? How exactly? What exactly is unbiased? I really don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't know how to do that. And to be aware of it it's almost, it sounds so pedantic. It's like, be careful, the ground is level. Like, okay, yeah, no kidding. I don't know, be careful of the stair, like there's stair. I don't, it's in the world, there's bias.
Yeah.
And sometimes bias is based on our own profiles, age, gender, sex, political views. Sometimes it's based on thinking, that people have a bias towards old ways of thinking, whatever, not new ways of thinking. People said this is actually, the large language models, one way in which people don't appreciate the degree to which they're biased is they're actually biased towards the average. These are giant averaging machines. That's all they are. They're giant averaging machines. And so one of the problems of misinformation is that you can, and this is probably getting worse, you can ask a large language model for an answer to a question, and it may not give you the right answer. It's going to give you the consensus answer, which blatantly may not be the right answer.
Right.
Yeah. That's a type of bias.
Super interesting.
Yeah, all large language models are, they are automating something as well. What they're automating is Google search. Yeah. That's what they're doing. So instead of you needing to do 20 Google searches, you do one, right? That's what it does. And they're getting very good at this. And it speeds up a lot of work because a lot of people's work has just been doing Google searches.
Very true.
Right? Just searching the web for information. So how we eliminate bias, and this is truly an elimination of bias, is we use logic, and I mean logic in the very strict sense. We have sequences of logic, and it requires a very disciplined pronouncement of what is wanted, what is desired out of an outcome. The idea is that you can say rub the bottle for the genie and ask for $1 billion. But then you suddenly get it in paper that blows away, or suddenly you get a chunk in your house that's in gold and you can't get it out, or something, or it's wrapped in something that's going to have ink on it that's going to be, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
So you'd say, okay, no, I want $1 billion in my bank account. That's post-tax and legal and safe, or something such thing. But there's a whole number of other ways that could go wrong. So people are very good at just describing all the circumstances of what they want and then what they don't want. So this is hard, actually, deciding things in logic, but it is actually how to eliminate bias. What we do is we're eliminating bias in structuring sequences in our deep infrastructure. This is in risk management in banks. It's in, as I talked about, in the power systems. It's in designing aircraft, because you and I are not going to get in any aircraft that was designed by a large language model, right? There's no chatbot in the world, even 10 years from now, that's going to design an aircraft that I'm going to get, right? That's because it's the nature of it. I mean, those are for exploration, and they're fine with that, but they're not for dealing in logic and dealing in fact, so that you could bet your life on it, or more to the point, bet your career on it. It's how we often interact with these things, right? So we will define logic, and we will then prove the efficacy of this logic and put it into our AI to comprehensively look at the largest organizations in the world for logical contradictions between those sequences of logic. That's what our AI does. That's how our AI works. It's a opposite way of a chatbot, where a chatbot is using induction. All birds are all swans are white until they're not, right? In induction, or versus deduction, which is all birds have wings. This animal has wings, therefore it's a bird. It's just it's a factual sequence. You get to, and by the time you get to the end, it is true as a fact. These work in concert in many applications, but we're working in this deduction part. So we call it a neurosymbolic AI is what our AI does. And that's how we are eliminating bias. We can't do this though for news, right? Can't do it for marketing. And we're fine with that. While a lot of people are distracted with chatbots, summarizing their email or other such things, we are solving the problem that most of the world interacts with, which is the deep infrastructure to make sure that they get water, fresh water, to make sure their electrical grid operates, to make sure that the world's logistical system operates with assuredness. And those are places that you do not want to have bias. That's what neurosymbolic AI.
So, okay, I'm also aware of the time here. I want to connect this to kind of the later part of each of the podcasts, which is kind of structured around like the future. Like it used to be 10 years down the line, but that's way too far now. Who the heck can perceive 10 years into the future or predict 10 years into the future? If we're going along this track right now, where you're having logic, unbiased artificial intelligence helping I guess I would say like the structures of whether it's energy or different kinds of essential aspects of nations and societies. Do you see, I guess you hope, because this is part of the work that you do in your company, like do you see many different aspects of nations in the next 5 or 6 years starting to utilize these AI tools to not just to eradicate, the cumbersome human aspect there, but to make it more efficient, save all this money that you were talking about at the beginning, and have. I have an image of in my mind, like there's an AI layer that is not running the world, but like the world depends on it in order to function more efficiently than it does today. Is that kind of a correct visualization? Yeah.
There's a place in the tech stack, to be sure.
Yeah.
But that there's not going to be some sort of universal mind.
No.
It's like a saran wrap layer
many different artificial intelligence, systems that are enabling these different aspects. Is what
I worked in the U.S. federal government, 2015, 2016, 2017. Back in that. So I know what 10 years looks like, and I may not have been able to predict the expression or timing, certainly the magnitude of the large language models, but I did get the privilege of seeing some of the largest AI deployments in the world. The insight I got from that experience, I think, does help me inform a view of what's going to happen over the next 10 years in this domain, which is the integration of data is unfathomably powerful in being able to make better decisions. Our political leaders, our business leaders, both are impaired in their ability to make decisions because of the narrow view of the data that they're currently getting. The U.S. government, I'm not saying anything out of school here. This is all public. The U.S. government, spends tens of billions on this thing called the CDAO, trying to integrate data across the in this particular case, just the Defense Department. It's a real vulnerability of the U.S. government, and that they're currently trying and failing to do this. Absent neurosymbolic AI, but there's a certain institutional momentum that carries them into doing the same time and materials billing that they've always been doing. I'd like to be optimistic, but it hasn't gone well so far in the U.S. trying to solve their problem.
Right.
Europe has its own problems that we've talked about in being a little skeptical of anything that's going to automate away jobs, which might say that China could be taking a lead in this particular issue because they might not have the same sensibilities. I'm going to point out a different area, which is in the Middle East. The there is so much money going into AI expressions in Qatar, in the United Arab Emirates, through MBZ UAI, which is all like gone from nowhere to the 30th best AI research university in the world, to KAUST, this science and technology university in the western coast of Saudi Arabia, with very smart people working on AI research, and a motivation for this 5-year vision, or it was a 10-year vision, but that's coming up now, 2030, that other governments don't have. The U.S. government, I don't know about the Chinese, but the Europeans, they'll have a certain degree of momentum that I've seen continue over the last 10 years. That's prediction would allow you to be sympathetic to the idea of that continuing for the next 10 years. Whereas the Saudis in particular have this vision, and boy, by 2030, they're going to see who's in the government swimming with with their shorts off. They have to reconcile some of these. And I had seen some degree of urgency there that I don't see in some of the governments in Europe and in the United States. And so I think if we're looking out 2, 5, even 10 years, I think the composition of databases is uniquely powerful. I'll say one more thing about that. I can say this publicly. We did this for Uber. If they wanted to consolidate the databases of all their cities around the world, it's 300,000 databases. 300,000 databases. And with that, they eliminated or repurposed a couple hundred people. That's automation, but they also saved 10 to 15 million US a year by the alacrity with which they can make ordinary business decisions, and they can ensure conformance to different governance variations between different jurisdictions. This is very powerful stuff when you get databases properly integrated. This power system in Europe that we helped to compose. They use coal less as backup. This is a very, very powerful. I'm really optimistic about the implementations of neurosymbolic AI over the next 2, 5, and even 10 years. This is going to continue into the future. I can say a lot more, but that's my prediction about what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to allow you to, because this is, the scale of it, I think, is dawning on me, and I'm sure when this launches on a lot of the listeners. I think we're a little bit so focused on how AI is going to impact me. I've got ChatGPT up here on one of my screens, right? I use it every single day, and it's such a boon for my personal life, but I'm disconnected from Saudi Arabia, or some of these larger, like the energy grid in Europe. Even though I lived there for 10 years, I'm not connected to it anymore. But from what you're saying, it does, and I understand why you're optimistic about the future here. Is there's tremendous savings in all of these places where AI can be properly integrated. And I guess the overall view here is that the world just gets better because of it, right? Save more money. Yes, some people will unfortunately have to reskill, or take an early retirement. But overall, there's tremendous savings, which I would hope could be turned back into social programs, or benefit the nations that are actually experiencing these cost savings.
We can apply a much more direct outcome to this than just you and I being aligned on what we hope is going to happen. It's that when you have these databases consolidated, or composed, because we're not going to normalize them. We're not going to get rid of the fidelity that we spend so much resources, much time and effort attracting. When you compose all these databases, you're able to make better decisions.
Right. Yeah.
You're also able to do what if scenarios, so you can try out policies before you implement them. I mean, in the pedantic, for prosaic way, you could just say, well, I want to improve a city's traffic flow. I don't have to alter the roads. I can model it better because I have all this data that I've collected from the thousands of sensors that are already available around the city at every intersection. We did this for the city of Boston for a smart cities contract there. You can have 2 or 10 sensors that may all be from a particular version of a particular model from a particular vendor. But you can hear even how I describe that quickly explodes into something that is unmanageable. It's unmanageable absent neurosymbolic AI, right? That is what we do. And once you compose that, then you have a universal view of the city of Boston traffic, and you're able to make better decisions about the traffic flow from all the perspectives. What am I going to do, not just for the flow of light, but what will I do for weather? What will I do in planning public transportation? What will I do because there's a big public event, a concert or a sports event or what have you, to manage this? I will just make better decisions, and I can test these what ifs much more effectively. I can extrapolate that out to a range of circumstances to say, how many ships at sea do I want, and what size of ships do I want? Bigger, or maybe we all go smaller? How my air traffic still is in these big highways in the sky. They're still not point to point because we're not using GPS. If we're actually be able to compose databases from air traffic control around the country, we can save on fuel. We can shorten the length of travel for aircraft because you don't have to, take a left at Des Moines. You can just use the GPS to guide you and manage your altitude relative to other traffic. So yes, the world is going to get better because we're going to be able to manage complexity, or the systems will allow us to manage the complexity that naturally emerges from the growth of interactions from humans. And that's the end game. If I was going to predict out 10 years, the end game of AI isn't us sitting on our butt watching more TikTok. It's in us being able to bring whatever genius arises from within the individual and collaborate with other humans. This is to facilitate collaboration with other humans. That's what AI, that's the end game for AI.
I don't know a better way to end a podcast, Eric. I think that this is why, or one of the many reasons why people are so enthusiastic about the future as it pertains to, these LLMs and just AI systems in general, bettering the world. And I think, unfortunately, with whether it's TikTok or whatever, any of these social media posts, there's so much fear about AI, maybe warranted, but I think conversations like this, hopefully the people that listen to it get enthusiastic about, not just the first order effects that you're saying, but then the second and, the second order effects that we might not even be aware of. We can't extrapolate out because, we're not AI yet, and we can't think of those things. So, fabulous. Eric, I'll have your LinkedIn and your company's website up on the show notes. Are there any other places that you want people to reach out or follow what you do?
Connexus.com. It's good.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your, I would say, very inspiring ideas here with me in the podcast.
Thank you.
Terrific pleasure. Thanks for coming on today.
It's good to be here. It was a good time.
Perfect. Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, The fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.